understand. Okay, so we all have this open and we have our data set here, yes?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take my mouse open. I don't feel
Why
like
did mine say 10?
my order is different from yours, but that's okay.
Oh,
Don't stress about the order. I've been doing this all day, so the order got a little jumbled.
Okay.
What we're gonna do is find our mean, median, mode, range, and standard deviation. But what I want to do first is I want to define these just so you guys have them in one place. So let's define these words, and my mouse is not working. Let's change this to 14. What's our mean again?
30.
Just like the general term of mean. What does it mean?
Like when you add all the numbers up?
Yeah, so it's gonna be our average. This is where we add all the numbers, and divide by the number of terms. So we have our mean. We also have our median. Our median is the middle number. Oops, middle number. And our middle number, if we end up having two of them, if we have two, we find the average, which is what we did for our one just now. Take those two middle numbers, add them together, and divide by 2. We also have our mode. What's our mode?
The one that happens most often?
So we can say most often. This is the number that occurs the most, and we can have more than one. So if a number repeats the same amount as another number, then both of those numbers will be our mode. So I can say like 3 and 5 on my mode. Or I can say 2 and 6 on my mode. I like sitting back here so you can see how far you guys have gotten. Huh?
Like my number stuff.
My numbers are out of order.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's what
that's
I
okay.
said.
Range. Do you guys remember what range is?
How far?
Kind of. It's actually
It'll be
really
like
close.
2 to 25.
Yeah. So it's going to be the biggest number and the smallest number, and we subtract them. So largest number, subtract smallest number. And finally, we have standard deviation. Do you guys remember standard deviation? Have you learned about standard deviation?
Nope.
I feel like most teachers have skipped standard deviation throughout the years. I know I did. What does it mean to deviate?
Deactivate.
Divide?
Take away.
Take away, kind of. If I'm deviating from my plan, what does that mean?
Deactivate. Like
Back it away.
Huh?
Back it away.
Backing away, kind of going off course, right? Or like kind of
Not
getting
doing your
away from, like, not doing my plan. So if I'm deviating from my plan, then I'm not doing my plan.
So like, what is that word? It's in like acting. Improv?
Kind of, yeah, kind of going off script. So, what that means is, in terms of data, it means that our data is getting away from the center, or getting away from our average. So, this is how far the data is from the mean, or the average. So basically, let's say that we all took a test, and our average test score was 75%. If we have a big standard deviation, that means that the data is really spread out. I mean, some people may have gotten 100, some people may have gotten 0, and the data is super spread out across the board.
Like a scatter plot?
Yeah, kind of like that. And if our standard deviation is really small, that means that all of our scores are kind of around the same spot. So it's gonna be really close to our average. Most people got either 75 or around 75, somewhere between 70 and 80 maybe.
What was that big word Olivia said?
Scatter plot?
Yeah, what is it? You just explained it.
Yeah,
anyway.
it's just
So-
faster.
When I used to sitting in a student chair,
It's nice.
It's nice.
it hurt my
Do you
butt.
miss
It's
it?
hard.
So good. Questions on this?
No.
Cool. So we have our major definitions here. And I want to show you guys how Google Sheets works, because with Google Sheets, we actually don't need a calculator. And it does a lot of the math for us. So it makes life a lot easier. So the first thing I want to do is find the mean of this data set. So here, the mean is our average. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the average of our data set. We can do this by pressing the equals button. Whenever I push equals, it's going to write some sort of equation for me. It's going to do some math for me. Yeah, so I'm going to do equals average. This lets the computer know that I want to find the average of my numbers. So equals average and then open a parentheses.
I love this. Yeah, sell.
Yeah.
Sell some A2, A9.
Good. So I want to click my data. So I'm going to start with cell A2. That's this 8. And I'm going to drag all the way down to A9. So I'm going to drag from this point to this point, and this is going to be my data range.
What?
How do I get there, Mr. Stuff?
So again, I'll do it one more time. You press
Oh.
equals, and then type in average. So equals average, and then open a parenthesis.
Really?
How are you trying to watch a movie and do this at the same time?
This is why people get lost.
And we drag and select. Once you've selected everything, press enter. And my average is
12.
12. I did all of this without having to type it in my calculator. Nice, right? Makes life easy.
You could literally use this for like the test.
Yeah.
Test on this, just go over.
You absolutely could. And you should.
Hey.
Good.
Okay, so how's it getting the average though? Where's the numbers? The numbers
It's taking these numbers here.
See the on the left? Oh yeah. Like you
It just automatically takes it from A and now
you take them.
It adds it together and it divides. Does it for you. Cool, right?
It is, huh?
So, next is our median. When we're looking for a median, our data has to be in order, yes?
Yes.
So what I want to do here is I want to sort this. I can click and I can select all of these numbers.
Why did mine add? Oh, wait, never mind. That did.
So highlight these numbers, highlight all of our data.
Again?
Yes. Just the numbers.
Stupid.
And then up at the top it says data, click data, click sort range, and you can sort this A to Z. If you sort this A to Z, it's going to go from least to greatest. If you go Z to A, it's going to go greatest to least.
I don't think you need to do that for median. I think median does it automatically.
You can actually, yeah, you
A
can.
to Z?
I
A to Z?
teach you guys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You can just.
Haley, it's A to Z.
This is I think I'm just gonna rewatch this video.
Yeah, me too.
Okay,
fine.
go. Highlight all the numbers.
So what's my median? What numbers are in the middle?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're between 10 and 12, so that's going to be 22 divided by 2 is 11. So that means that my median here is 11. What's my mode? Does any number repeat?
Nope.
Nope. So I have you can do any. But either one works. Our median is the middle number. So we looked for the number in the middle of our data set.
Haley.
Oh my god, you're a mess, child.
What's our range? Remember, largest number subtract smallest number, so that's going to be 23. 25 minus 2 is 23. These are easy, yes? Okay, let's get to the good stuff. The standard deviation is a little bit difficult, so try to stick with me. Again, if you have questions, please stop me. If I'm going too fast, please slow me down.
I'm doing 2 people.
So our standard deviation, in order to find this, if we were to do this by hand, what we have to do is take our data, find the average, subtract each data point from the average, and then take that number and square it. And then find the average of all those numbers, and then find the square root of that. And doing that by hand takes forever because you have to do each data point one by one. So we're gonna do it in here because it's gonna be a little bit easier. So hopefully this makes sense. The first, I have these column titles basically. So these column titles are basically what's going to go into each column. This first one is our data. This is our data that comes from the top over here. The second one is going to be our average. Our average is our mean, and we've solved for our average already. Here we're going to subtract our data and our average, and then we're going to square it. So let's start with our data.
Hold up, sir.
Here. Just do yours and then you can show me
Yeah,
later.
just do yours. Okay, well, I'm done.
Okay, so let's copy and paste this. We can select this data. You can either do Control C or you can right click copy. And you can Control V. So copy the data into this first little section here.
Stop. You okay?
Yeah.
What happened?
They give me detention.
What?
For that.
Oh, they're looking.
You know what?
Why?
They've been checking the cameras a lot lately.
Alright, so our data is copy pasted, yes? Now that our data is copy pasted, we want to type in our average. What's our average? 12. We found our average over here, so we're going to type in 12. And I want to fill every box here with 12, so I'm going to click this little blue box in the corner, and I'm going to drag it down so I don't have to keep typing 12.
Wait, how did you do that?
So again, I'm going to type 12 here, because that's my average, and then if you click, there's a little blue box in the corner.
Okay.
We can click that and drag it down so we don't have to keep typing it over and over again.
What is it when I type something, it disappears?
Oh yeah, fact.
So again, this data comes from the top, and my average we just solved for, and we're just filling out these boxes. So far, so good? Copy paste your data first.
Okay.
Data goes right here, yeah.
Paste?
Just paste it, yeah.
Okay.
Don't paste it into one cell.
Oh, see, that's why.
So erase that.
Doing.
Click another cell, and then click back, and then just do Control V. There you go.
Okay.
And then fill out the rest, which is false.
Okay.
Good. Alright, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna subtract these two values. We want to subtract the data and the average. So I'm gonna put equals, because whenever I want to do math, I have to put equals. And I'm gonna click this first cell. I'm gonna click on 2. After I click on 2, I'm gonna put a subtraction sign, and I'm going to click on 12.
Oh.
Good. If I press enter, then it subtracts these for me, and it also autofills for me. So if I click this little green check mark, it'll fill the rest of them with the same function. So again,
Is it just
we do it one more time. I'm gonna do equals, take this data point, subtract this one.
oh just fill down?
Yep, and then fill down.
What? That's what?
Enter. And then you can, yeah, click the check.
Okay, so restroom.
Yeah. Let me do this one. Bring me the pass. Or just take a pass. Last thing we want to do for this table is we want to square all these values. So I'm going to square them by doing equals. I'm going to click this cell here. And I do Shift 6 to get a little caret. And 2, which is squared. That makes sense? And then again, we can fill the rest of these with that value. So click here, take this bottom corner, and drag it all the way down. So now we have all of these values squared. Cool. Any questions so far? So I'll do this one more time. We can do equals, click on this cell here, Shift 6, and 2. That does the little caret 2, so that's square root of 2. Or not square root, so that's
That's what
square.
you meant by carrot. I was like, what?
Press enter, and then you can drag this down. Good. So now we have 2 more steps. We now want to find the average of all of these numbers here, the last column, and we want to find the square root. Square root. So we're going to find the average of this guy, and we're going to do the same thing that we did to find our mean. We just do equals average, and highlight this. Google Sheets are pretty smart, so if you put it under the data, it'll automatically highlight the data that's above it. average should come out to 46.25. So again, we're finding the average of these values here. Good. And finally, we want to find the square root. So we do again equals. Square root is going to be SQRT. SQRT is shorthand for square root. So we do SQRT open parentheses and we click on the average, which is 46.25. If you want to type in 46.25, you can do that as well. Either one works, but we're finding the square root of this average here. And that gives us 6.800. What this means is that my standard deviation is about 6.80. And that means our data is about 6.80 units away from the average. Not bad. So again, if we had to do this by hand, we'd have to subtract these numbers and then square this number. And then we'd have to do that over and over again for every data piece that we have. This is a lot faster because we can just drag and drop and it does all for us. And honestly, if you're real smart, if you want to use different data sets, you can just plug them into this here and these formulas will still work because we have these cells set up. That makes sense? So looking at our data starts at 2 and it ends at 25. Our standard deviation is fairly large. It's pretty big because it's saying that from our mean, which is 12, we're about 6.8 away from our mean either way. So our data is pretty spread out. Cool. Questions?
Rebecca's running for class president.
Yeah.